Mark here for another great Wisdom and Knowledge 5 podcast. And tonight I collaborate with Jehan Sattaur of Boundless Authenticity podcast. And he is in Barbados. I am in North Carolina. And we welcome Ian Ball to the podcast, someone who, fully comprehends what's going on in the world, doesn't fall for, propaganda, agendas, you name it, has been taking a stand for humanity for quite some time now. And Ian, it is just a thrill, to discuss, what is going on in the world. And thank you so much for coming on tonight.
I always appreciate the invitation and to join your very informative podcast and your amazing guests like Jahan and always to have an opportunity to contribute. So thanks.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Jahan, why don't you start this thing out for us?
Okay, well, I'm just gonna be curious about the obvious stuff. Like how did you wake up to all this crazy stuff going on out there?
Oh, what a great question. I guess. Well, I'll tell you. Actually, it started when I was quite young, but then it kicked in later on. Like for example, when I was a youth. My parents, in particular, my mom would say, like would call the TV the boob tube as a because kind of a reference that it was kind of a mindless, programming and so forth. And so at an early age, I sort of picked up on that, and then I actually, you know, did some, artwork back then to kind of demonstrate that actual principle. Like I had an old TV, like the old TVs, a small one, and I actually painted a spiral on it to indicate that it would draw you in, it would hypnotize you. Now that was as a teenager, but fast forward, it was really, it was 2001 was when I became very active, September 11th, because shortly after that, I questioned the narrative because of my background in building engineering and structural engineering, and then I started to listen to different, podcasts at that time, and then I just started doing research, and then that branched off into the banking system, into nutrition, and into event. Just a few years later, I already tapped into like 2005, 2006 into geoengineering, and then continued to dive into that subject. So you know how it is, Jan. There's just a lot of pieces to this puzzle, and in order to kind of get your head around it, it does take time to kind of grasp and understand the connections and the different ways that they're kind of, you could say, attacking humanity in very subtle ways and some not so subtle ways. And so then, COVID was another huge, it was not, that was right at the very beginning. I already picked up on what was going on there. And just fast forward, now we're in, what I find interesting is the way that they use controlled opposition, right? Johannes and Mark, it's like very sophisticated controlled opposition to try to get all the other kind of non-compliant people, subtly into the agenda. So it's, I just don't take any of this left-right paradigm, where they try to catch us in that, and we have to be careful not to get caught up in that. So I guess that's kind of, my origins up to date in a very, very big, nutshell. So I'll let you and Mark maybe have your say on that and where you got your origins too, Jehan. I'd like to know.
Yeah, please
Okay,
tell us,
well,
John.
I'll jump into that, but first I'll say that the controlled opposition thing is something that has fascinated me. It's probably in the top three most difficult topics to dive into because there's so much of it, and it's all stuff that you don't think is working against you. It's like Tom and Jerry. So, if Tom ever caught Jerry, the show would be over, right? And so that's kind of the
Apology.
way that the legal system is set up. And even I was saying this to Mark, and because I was disagreeing with someone that they were saying, "Oh, Dell Big Tree and ICANN just released this documentary or whatever." And like, well, first of all, I don't even want to hear that because I've spent a lot of time researching this guy, and because of the things that I know about mind control, he's using the same tactics. And I listed a whole bunch of other names, and Mark can fill in the gaps on some of those names. But
Hmm.
these guys that have these platforms, there's a reason that they have these platforms. And you know not every time someone flashes a symbol does it mean that they're a part of the club. But essentially, what it simplistically boils down to is, if you have a large following, there's a reason why you're allowed to have that following, whether you're a club member or not.
Yeah.
You're feeding one monster or the other, right?
Yeah.
So it's it's difficult then for other people who have good intentions that are waking up to actually find their way on the straight and narrow path, because there's the straight and slightly curvy path, there's the real narrow one that goes that way, and then there's a whole bunch of other ones that kind of look like they're straight, but then when you walk on them you hit a wall or it becomes a maze or something else. And they don't know any of that. They don't know what to look for or anything. And the complexities make it almost impossible for you to escape that beast system, essentially, is what it is.
Yeah.
So I got into this because I was in the music industry, and in my early 20s, actually from about age 17 to maybe about 23, to be more accurate, I was the guy that was getting a lot of industry contact, and contracts kept coming at me, or opportunities for people to invest in my music um, would continue to come up, but they would always come at a cost. It would be go to this shady party with this person, and it would just be a bunch of young boys and one gay man, a clearly gay man, actually a known gay man that was like in the fashion industry, or someone else that was labeling themselves as a music aficionado that was well respected but really doesn't know anything about it. Also, strangely homosexual. Um, but then there were like women handlers that would come along from artists and repertoires positions in various labels and try to seduce you, because I guess once they figured out that you weren't going to go that way, they send what they think you like. Because they I figured out later that they have people that are expert profilers, and they watch you, see what your activity is, as they send people to talk to you that look like normal average people. Then it could be your friends, it could be a girlfriend, and I've had those experiences too. But through all that, I can tell you more stories about that later. But through all that, and working my way up to what would arbitrarily be considered a spiritual awakening around age 25, I tried to like commit suicide, and I was tired of it, tired of this planet. I was like, fuck this, I'm out. And it didn't work. And I tried about three different times. And I remember I was like, Jesus Christ, I can't even kill myself right. So when I heard that leave my mouth, and I pondered it for a while, all of a sudden a lot of dots just connected. And I was like, you know what? There's something else out there for me. There's a reason why. And instead of becoming the ordinary head in the sand, um, 9 to 5 diligent worker bee type person, it woke me up even more. It pissed me off even more. And I started to then realize, you know what? A whole lot of stuff in my life has been engineered to be this way, whether through some divine force or some group of people. And I hated feeling like I was a victim somehow. That's the one thing I cannot stand, is being a victim in any circumstance. I have to find a way to be 100% responsible for it. So I couldn't wrap my way around um, everything that was going on. And fortunately, I had a lawyer that sat me down and he was like, hey, listen, man, you got this contract, but let me tell you, this clause and this clause and this clause are basically getting you to sign your life away for the next 2 years. There's no loophole. And even after those 2 years, you'll be in debt to these people. Section 14 basically says you're gonna sign your image, your likeness, your name, everything away to this company. And he was like, "You don't believe me? he pulls out his laptop, shows me a video on YouTube with all this Illuminati stuff, and that red pilled me harder than anything else. And that was how I ended up um kind of coming online, so to speak. Oddly, after that, all kinds of people would give me books about psychology and meditation and things like that. Well, as I got involved in that, then I think I just evolved very quickly after that and set out upon a long journey to go into. So that's what kind of got me here. I'm 38 now, so I've been on that path for a long time. And I feel like I've lived about 400 years in that time just based on the amount of investigation and learning I've done.
Wow. That's quite that was quite impactful,
Hmm.
Yeah, that's a lot of experiences in that, and leading to like your spiritual awakening. And I think that's anybody who's like awake, it's kind of, I think, varying degrees of awakenings, but it all has to do with yeah, something spiritual deep within, within ourselves for
Hmm.
sure. When we see the profound injustices and the corruption that is omnipresent around us, we almost feel like there's no hope sometimes. Like it's just so, you know, uh, so much depth to it. And but when we meet together and we join our, when we connect with others that are on this path. It's we're all in a similar journey. We all have different origins in different ways,
Hmm.
but we're all kind of that's what I find very amazing is that we're really we're on the same path, although maybe our final objectives are slightly different, but we're
Hmm.
on that. The process is very similar. Let's put
Yeah.
it that way. And you know, it's just we have to deal with the continuous corruption at all levels. I see it at all levels, whether it's governmental and also in the compliance nature of our societies. That's a
Hmm.
big issue here in Canada. It's even with obvious corruption facing, they'll still go for a certain direction and accept a certain narrative. So we keep going. We have to be like soldiers and warriors in this process and
Hmm.
be stronger for that, and then help to slowly peel the eyes of others that can perhaps be led into that direction. I've been very fortunate to have the opportunity to even see friends and colleagues of mine that they have enough openness that once they get that spark, once they start to see one part of it, you know, it truly opens up the door. Now, depending
Hmm.
on how deep they go down the various rabbit holes is another story, but they're already on the process. Yeah. So I guess, here in Canada, we are still really in a difficult situation as they're doing a controlled demolition on our economy. And it's like that is the biggest and most prominent problem for just about everybody across the country.
Hmm.
And the funny thing is, not the funny, but it's the sad thing is like there are people just they don't see what the causes are and understand that this is not only is this being caused deliberately by our government, that it's just going to continue and they want to still go in a certain direction. I say vote for a certain party, but we know that the other parties it's like kind of a control opposition. But the way I see it is that it's a way of kind of moving the dial back or just putting a buffer. Like I don't believe in any political party, but any party at least that creates a certain buffer. But the pendulum's always swinging back and forth. That's the problem, right? There's
Hmm.
never the system itself is so profoundly corrupt. So you go and you vote, you're basically giving approval to the system. So that's kind of the dilemma, right? It's like
Hmm.
a vote is just supporting a corrupt system. But what do we do?
Well, one thing I want to chime in on is I think the way that woke up was first with the foods, getting into natural health, going to seminars, like Health Freedom Expos when I was in LA. But as far as the political thing, I had gone back to community college. This was Los Angeles, Valley College, and I wanted to start up a natural health club to talk about things like this, natural health issues. And they're like, nah, you can't do that. We already have an active club, which was basically a gym recess type club. And then they'd go at the football games and serve hot dogs and sodas and things like that. And I'm like, no, no, I'm gonna do this. This is what I want. I want to bring in guest speakers, naturopathic doctors, you name it. And so I went and I made sure that it happened. And it was funny because they said, well, you have to actually get enough signatures to sign up to create a club on campus. And then when I went to go and collect signatures, they like, you can't stand on this part of the campus. You have to stand over here. It was like a safe space or something that's like it was like 50 feet away from the cafeteria. It made no sense whatsoever. I mean, but I was able to, do that. And then every Thursday you'd meet. It was so absurd. Every Thursday you'd meet and you'd have a gavel. It'd be like Congress or House of Representatives. I motion to speak, and this is what we're speaking on. And, uh, it's just like, and I was able to do it for like, one semester. And then I'm like, this really isn't the right platform. These people are, and just transitioned over to another community college that had like courses that, like nutrition and stuff. But I think that was a big wake up call into that. And when I was working on the nonsense TV shows, because I call it nonsense because, it was funny. I'd be booked for pedestrian, FBI, you name it on like NCIS, CSI. There would even be like blood rituals. They'd bring in things with Malcolm McDowell. And this is on CBS where they did a blood ritual and it's like a Illuminati type thing. And I remember Christian being there and being like, no, I'm not going to participate in this. And at the time, I didn't know left from right. And if you don't participate, you get banned from central casting. But, when that stupid 2016 election came, right after that election, they just completely roll out an agenda where it's going to be tearing down statutes, white nationalists. That's what we're going to book you for. As before, it was this, that, and the other. I will say this, though. I was a part of predictive programming because Michael Bay had this TV show called The Last Ship. And I've talked about this before, where all of humanity is wiped out by a pandemic. They moved the White House over to St. Louis. It was so strange. Like the first season, I was one of the bodies piled up to be left for dead in the plague. You can't survive. And then the next season, and I wasn't on there like every episode. It was just like when they booked me. The next season I come back, I'm a White House staffer, and the White House is in St. Louis. I mean, at the time I didn't know, but just waking up to the predictive programming type thing and the propaganda, I think was a big eye opener for me. And also, I think it's me being able to live because I've lived in, I grew up in Michigan. I lived in Chicago. I lived in LA, lived in Vegas for a year, Phoenix, and now I'm here in North Carolina. Just experiencing what different parts of the US are because it is different in different parts of the US. And the thing that's so sad about the US is instead of standing for humanity, they focus on the colors. It's a red state, it's a blue state, it's this, it's that. They don't get it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's something that stands out to me always. It's the obsession, or rather the projection onto people with statism. And I mean, I never got it because I rebelled against that kind of stuff from the time I was about 6 years old. I remember there was a homework assignment where you had to, and I think I told you this too, Mark, where you had
Okay.
to write that poem. So it had to be all the letters in the word Barbados had to mean something. And basically they had it all written out for you, but you just had to copy it down and like, and I was like, so okay, let me understand this. Is it that I'm supposed to write my own, or am I supposed to regurgitate this back to you? And they were like, yeah, just write it out and make it look pretty. And I'm like, what? That doesn't make any sense. And it was only later on that when I said I wasn't going to do it, for whatever reason in my dumb little head, I pissed off my parents big time because the teacher was like, who wrote the assignment? And everybody was like, I got it. And like, I just didn't have it. I didn't do it. And the teacher asked me why I didn't do it. And I said, I didn't like it. And she took a ruler and slapped me over the hand or something. So I remember I got in the car and I was in tears. And it was like the teacher slapped me over my hand, and my mother spun the car around, drove back to the school, went inside, roughed up the teacher. She was like, "Why the fuck did you hit my son?" And she's like, "Well, he didn't want to do the poem or whatever it is, and like whatever they were calling it, some kind of they had a weird name for it. I forget what it is now, but I know that it's a thing that they do on purpose because at political rallies, the crime minister, as we call her, crime, she'll say, "I say B, I say BA," and she'll be saying it, and usually by the time she gets to R, the rest of the crowd, their eyes glaze over and they chime in and start saying it back to her. And I was like, oh, holy shit. I now get it. Like by the time I was around 12 years old, I think I finally got it. And I had a radical dislike for government after that because I realized it's like that nosy neighbor that wants to know everything that's going on in your yard and they have no right to ask any questions about it.
Mm-hmm.
And that pissed me off because I'm a very private person. I always have been. Not that that makes sense because I'm on a podcast telling all my business, but um, I just couldn't understand it from then, and so I started following the little breadcrumbs little by little. So now we get to this point where I understand that statism is a religion, right? It's
Mhm.
it's the main religion that we've always had from the beginning of time, and that's the main mechanism that props everything up. That's why you never see, even when people take action and they think, okay, logically there's two parties, but if a third one comes along and I put my votes on the third party, that's why it never works because it's not engineered to have three. It's
Mm-hmm.
either that
What
wing
you're
or
saying
that
everywhere,
wing,
right? Yeah.
you know? So until people really take their power back and realize that everything that they need can be provided within a community, common unity, essentially. Everybody comes together, trade food, look after each other, help with the kids, build houses together, whatever. Until people realize that that's what real life is supposed to be like and not this other crap, I think we're dead in the water, honestly, everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And they're using, like you were saying, they're using the same tactics over there in Canada that they're using everywhere else because they're trying to figure out we have designed this system that now at this point where everyone can see, even the fucking NPCs can see that we're slipping.
Mm-hmm.
How do we let them down easy, so to speak? So we have to figure out how to take this manufactured system that we've created, even though we could just take money away anytime we want. How do we crash that system so that the people that are still offline believe it? You get
Mm-hmm.
what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it's just a bunch of dumb shit, and I don't know if we can ever get out of this. And I don't want to be negative about it, but I just don't see that people are willing to take enough personal responsibility for themselves.
Mm-hmm.
They would actually rather work as slaves than have to do the same work anyways if they were just taking care of themselves and not having to worry about the money system, or the
Mm-hmm.
political system.
Well, they
Yeah.
designed a perfect system that they create the bars and you're in a jail and then in the prison, but and you don't they don't have to even like cl close the door. You'll close the door on the door and keep yourself inside the system.
Mm-hmm.
It's a perfect system, so because it's they just keep you worn out. They keep you worn out first of all, because you shouldn't have time to think. They keep you distracted, worn out, no time to think about it, and just trying to survive. And the massive amount of distractions, and of course the ongoing, constant MK Ultra programming that goes on, streaming, day after day. It's very hard, like you said, and it's like hard to conceive how we can break that spell, right?
Mm-hmm.
How we can help break the spell, and as collectively, there's still maybe not enough to realize, and also at different levels. Like people might be dissatisfied with the government, but that's how the system works. Is that they'll every time there's every 4 years or whatever, that's the hopium that they give you. Oh, maybe this party is gonna finally make a change, or we're gonna vote for change. Yeah, it's always the same
Hmm.
stupid, motto. And it's still the same, whatever party you're going to, maybe it shifts a little bit to the left, shift to the right, and people get caught in that, and they can't see that the prison is the entire system, not
Hmm.
not trying to vote the way out of to freedom. It's not going to happen. I
One
like your
thing,
idea of
yeah,
communities too. Yeah.
one thing I've noticed too is that, yeah, we can connect with a lot of people across the world, and it
Mm.
shows that we're standing up. But I've noticed on a local level, it's few and far between, and especially for someone like me who's single, who's trying to, you know, get out on the dating scene and wants to be with somebody who's unjabbed and somebody who fully comprehends what's going on. Well, they put up these websites like, or these apps, I should say, like unjected, and 99% of them are scams. I was chatting with someone that was somewhat local, and she's like, my friend told me to come on here. And I said, well, are you jabbed? And she goes, yeah, she actually admitted that she was. But that a lot, it's like infiltrated with 99% scams. It's like you go on to a regular site, it's like, you know, few and far between. And even like, I think it gives people are like, because I was dating somebody in Columbus, Ohio, because she was on jab, but it was a train wreck. We had nothing in common, and the whole reason why, I think I was in the relationship was because she was unjabbed and she, got what's going on in the world. But that's not, a reason to be in a relationship with someone. And it's sad that that's what humanity has come to, because so many people bought into these, propagandas and this agenda.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, it's yeah, trying to connect. Oh yeah, I was gonna yeah, just to I mean, we do kind of sound a little bit doomsday-ish in terms of that, and not much. But when we look across at like at the UK right now, for example,
Exactly.
there is there's a massive uprising happening there because they pushed it too far.
Hmm.
And so the UK patriots are waking up to that, and Ireland as well. Different countries. France is, when you provoke France, it's gonna explode as well. So there's we'll have to see where it leads to, because it's not enough just to go out on the street nowadays. It's almost like we have to learn some lessons from what they did in Nepal. I mean, I'm not going to promote that openly, but it was very effective, and it you know even some Eastern European bloc countries, they basically take the politicians, grab the lynch them practically, and throw them in garbage cans or something like that, just to humiliate them and just show their disdain of what they're doing and their corruption. So, there are some models out there that we need to be tweaked a bit. But I think, as for example, like the Freedom Rally here was a massive, like the largest in Canadian history, and the longest as well. And that's where it was a real threat, because they were bringing in more donations than any of the political parties combined. That's how powerful that movement was. And they tried to say that it was being funded by right wing, Republicans or something from the States, and that was a complete falsehood. It was mostly coming from Canadians, and everybody throwing in their certain amount. And then, of course, so it was such a threat that they had to invoke the war measures, or the Emergency Act, which was originally a War Measures Act, in a illegal way. And then they quickly froze bank accounts right after it was announced. They just froze bank accounts after that. So we can see that, when they need to wield that tyrannical power in a very open way, and trying to use some of the measure acts and measure, laws and bills that are in place as a cover, they'll do it, and that was proof there. So, but nonetheless, it was enough to push, like it did push back their agenda. No doubt, it caused them to have to basically slow down. The mandates were basically shortly after, like, withdrawn. So there was an impact. But more importantly, it sparked an international movement. So
Hmm.
that's when we saw the truckers in the Netherlands, the farmers and truckers in the different countries across Europe, and even in the US, they started to mobilize. So, but I don't think we're going to get a repeat of that. Unfortunately, to have that global kind of response, we have pockets of it right now. I mean, one of the things is the exposures of all the various, like the just the the number of victims of the jabs and the policies is becoming,
Hmm.
more and more exposed. And it's hard for them to try to push back. Although, even here in Canada, imagine they're still pushing. I hear ads on the radio when I just want to listen to see what they're saying, not
Hmm.
because I want to hear, I just want to see what's the latest narrative. So I listen to it and then, oh, they're still pushing jabs. They're saying that's the best way to counter the flu and other things. Imagine
Yeah.
that. The Quebec government is saying that. They're publicly supporting this.
Hmm.
So I guess they didn't get the memo, but
Here too, especially in the pharmacies, like outside the pharmacies, they got the banners going, get your, COVID jab, get your flu shot, this, that, and the other. It's just, I'm sure there's even billboards up over here. And one thing about here that's but I bet you it's the same in Canada is that it's so politically driven, like that movement. And the funny thing is too, uh, people were saying, I bet you both of you heard this, that, oh, because of the government shutdown, they're not spraying chemtrails, which couldn't be farther from the truth. They're spraying us left and right. We just had an Ironman competition over here over the past weekend, and they sprayed like crazy. You know, it's ridiculous to think that to have that type of mentality. Oh, well, there's a government shutdown, so they're not going to be doing what the nefarious things that they're normally doing. No.
yeah, yeah,
That's just another representation of the degree to which people do not fundamentally understand exactly what is going on.
Hmm.
And I think that not everyone's like the three of us, where we started to understand and we were like, hold on, we need to read the whole textbook. We're not going to take just a few details and now all of a sudden we are awakened, and there are far more people out there that enjoy talking about these kinds of topics as though it's just this funny thing or this really great piece of brain candy that they can get a little emotional charge or feel like they're smart because they talk about it. And then when we start to talk, others don't take us seriously because they don't understand the severity of it from how it's being conveyed. And that too is the issue with the Dell Big Trees and the David Ikes, etc. of the world, because it's now trivialized through using those same repetitive mind control techniques because they just want to sell you some stuff. Like they couldn't care less because at the end of the day, they got money and they're going to go hide out when the shit hits the fan for as long as they can because they know inevitably one thing is true: evil does not stop. These oppressive forces do not stop. They just change the lie. And however long it takes for them to implement whatever they want to implement, they just go back and they hide the legislations, or certain people will disappear or whatever to make it seem like that thing's gone away, but then that
Hmm.
thing comes back as something else. And like you were saying, Mark, with the vaccine thing and trying to relate to people or find people to enter a relationship with, people are now ashamed openly of having taken the thing,
Good
and
point.
they're just gonna do like everyone else does when they have a psychological thing built up around their own guilt and shame, is they're gonna lie about it,
Hmm.
right? So what do you do? You can't trust anyone on the internet as it is, because a lot of the times, based on my experience dealing with all different types of people from all different walks of life and all over the world, you get this same attitude where it's like, oh yeah, yeah, I know that. And then they turn around and do the thing that they said that they know is bad, right? Or they feed
Mm-hmm.
into that narrative, or they start parroting a narrative to you that indicates to you that, okay, yeah, this person is actually a dangerous person to be around because they're going to set everything on fire and they're just placating me or
Mm-hmm.
anybody else that asks them anything about it. They don't have the actual courage or even the psychological mechanisms to put one foot in front of the other and live a better life. It's scary. Um, as I guess doing my hypnotherapy practice and stuff like that, one thing that is making me actually want to stop doing that and focus more on podcasting is that it is more important to try to speak to people who are, I wouldn't say unawakened, but maybe those that can sense that something's wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Talk to them through the filter of what they already understand and get them to understand deeply that if you say you love your family, you got a lot of stuff you got to start working on immediately, because if you don't, you're going to die, your family's going to die, your kids, grandkids, whoever is most important to you is going to die. If it's your dog's going to die. And it wouldn't even actually be at the hands of the oppressors. It would be at your hands because you didn't take responsibility and do anything for it, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that's where we are actually at. And I think that, like what Ian was saying in the UK, that's kind of what's happening. Especially when I hear people, okay, so Barbados is a big tourist destination since the 70s when tourism has been our main form of foreign exchange. We've relied on the UK crowd. Now that has been surpassed by Canada and the United States greatly due to the amount of control in the UK, because they're telling people, oh, we want to know where you go and you can't travel more than once or twice a year. And that pissed off a lot of people because that's the thing they look forward to all year long, right? So now it's going to force the people in the UK who have a particular culture, and sorry to piss off anybody in the UK if this is you, but put down the goddamn Guinness, stop drinking a pint at the pub every evening, and actually think about the way that life is going. If you want to save money, don't spend money on things that are going to ultimately disempower you by dulling your psyche and destroying your body. Forget about it. It's time to put all those things to bed. All the people that are still playing video games at age 30 and it affects their relationships, it's time to throw the fucking PS5 in the garbage, because that's not what men do in the first place. Knock it off and put one foot in front of the other and start walking a real heavy step. Leave some footprints in the dirt behind you for people to follow you and see, okay, this guy's changed and he's actually doing stuff in his life. What is he doing? Let me follow that. Because if people don't take away disempowering habits and activities from their lives, they're going to be so focused on bullshit, and then they're going to act like, okay, why is the sky falling all of a sudden?
Mm-hmm.
This is not a time where you can have enjoyment, so to speak, and just distract yourself. If you can't cope with stress, you have to find all of the ways that your body naturally has designed to be able to cope with stress. Stop doing all the other dumb shit. You get what I'm saying? So, um, you know, when people who have these cultures, because it's the same thing here, that are built around disempowering behaviors and all the weird food and all the drugs and stuff, the party all the time kind of atmosphere. When these people start to wake up, then we'll actually see a big set of movement. But there's, like, what I can tell you is happening here, and what I've heard from family in the UK and stuff is that there's a lot more of the hedonistic stuff that's coming into play to kind of dull you and keep you busy doing that other stuff. Like they're even throwing Christmas at you in the middle of August. They're like, hey, don't forget about Christmas. Look over here. And that's happening here too. um they were talking about Halloween, but then again, this is nothing new either. They were talking about Halloween in like July, and we don't even do trick-or-treating here. So they're just desperate. Anything they can talk about is like, there's a party over there, go. like, and people would be dancing on their way over to the party, and oh yeah, I forgot they were oppressing us, right? So there's a lot of stuff with the vaccine stuff going on too, where it's another Tom and Jerry thing. Here locally, we have a particular developer who is basically in bed with the crime minister. During the pandemic, he decided, he took it upon himself. He actually woke up one day and was like, hey, you know what? You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to get some cheap vaccines and sell them back to the government. So he went and orchestrated and already, and I use this term lightly, illegal, because illegal is actually illegal. And legal is also illegal because they just make the rules, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they get to tell us what's illegal and what's legal, but it's all illegal, if that makes sense to anybody. It's kind of like that
Yeah.
Rob Schneider thing: when you get it, you got it, but if you got it, you don't get it, and then you got to get it some more, right? Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
right. So it, he decided he was going to go purchase these off-market vaccines that sold for $3 a pop. He was going to sell them back to the government at three times that, right? And they were from a distributor that actually was just going to sell like junk vaccines. So even worse than whatever is in there. It could have been water, it could have been, garbage, it could have been whatever they found and just filled these vials with it. Okay. And a lot more people would have just suddenly died for no reason. But the kicker there is that in order for that transaction to happen, he acquired written permission from the crime minister. So she went above the Ministry of Health and signed off on this. But she can't be prosecuted because, as a sitting prime minister, she has immunity from it, right? And the likelihood of him actually getting charged is probably slim because he has the money to weasel his way out of it. It'll probably break him trying to weasel his way out of it. But the felony in itself is only prosecutable within certain states in America. Okay. So what happened is that he took millions of dollars from our country and from St. Lucia and somewhere else. I think it was a third Caribbean country. And they don't know where that money's gone. Money's mysteriously vanished, right? This is money that people need,
Mm-hmm.
that's come out of their taxes that needs to be used to fix roads and all the other shit that they tell us they're going to do with the money that they never do, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you have things like the gas station is raising funds out of money that you spend on your gas just to raise $100,000 for equipment that the hospital needs, but they don't want to talk about where that money's gone to, and they never put any money into the hospital to begin with. So we all know that if you're here and you get sick and you have to go in the hospital, you're not coming back out. You should as well just say goodbye to your family, right? And it's been like that for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
So essentially, you have a situation where this guy woke up and decided, I'm going to steal a bunch of money and sell fake vaccines, and nobody's doing anything about it. And I'm using that as an example because they don't want to talk about it. This and other types of things, similar things, happen here, there in the United States and everywhere else,
Mm-hmm.
and it gets buried. And there's a whole lot of stuff that the average person doesn't know about, or if they know about it, they just figure the government's going to take care of it.
Mm-hmm.
So we're back to that same infinite cycle again, where don't worry, the government's going to investigate itself for the crimes it perpetuates.
Yeah.
And as you said, Ian, we need a Nepal situation, but we're not advocating for that. But that's what happens when you oppress people to that point.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you look at the people of Nepal in Kathmandu, you look at the average salary and how people who are middle class live, and it's far below the margin that I would be living at, or you in Canada, or over in North Carolina, Mark.
Yeah.
So why does it have to get to that point where they're so oppressed?
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of crazy that it was people of a particular generation that initiated that as well. They were like, oh, hell no. Before the military does anything, we're going to take over, right?
Mm.
So they understood the assignment, as they say. it's their strength in numbers. There's more of us than they are of them,
Yep.
right?
Mm-hmm.
But will those, has anybody heard anything? Will those politicians who flew away in helicopters, etc., were they ever captured or held accountable in any other way, or have they just disappeared? Are they in a bunker somewhere?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Accountability is not is a rare aspect at that level.
Mm-hmm.
Rare occurrence. Yeah. I mean, yeah. I would say that there was also a situation in Indonesia, which they were trying to impose taxes on the population, like very high taxes and on property taxes. Like they never had these before, and the politicians were, when people were criticizing it, the politicians, there were some of them that actually were insulting the population. Say you're stupid, you don't, they just literally came out and insulted the population. And then they basically like in Indonesia, like my wife's Indonesian, so I have a bit more understanding what's going on there. They basically not only did they riot, but they went to the homes of these politicians and basically raided them,
Mm-hmm.
uh, took out the money and then gave it to people on the street, broke into safes and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Again, not advocating that, but it just shows you that there's a level of desperation already in Indonesia, and that's where it's going. And on top of that, the politicians are arrogant enough that they think they can get away with this.
Mm-hmm.
Um, here it's just it's a mask of smiles and political word salads and so forth that they spew on a regular basis and make it sound like they're doing, that they're doing all they can to help the people. But it's the same thing, but they're just doing it under a very polite,
Mm-hmm.
facade, in a more, yeah. So it's just the same, like continue to demolish the economy to the point where people now will go and want to have a universal basic income.
Mm-hmm.
And
Exactly.
you now have the mayor of Edmonton. It's a west city in Western Canada, for those that
Mm-hmm.
maybe that's openly saying he's looking forward to, putting um, constructing and building up the 15-minute cities. Like
Yeah.
he literally came out and said that. And so, you know, um, this is where they're attacking us from all different angles, of course. And we saw the vaccines was just trying to
Mm-hmm.
depopulate the food for since so long that they're trying to just slowly we destroy our health and then become, dependent on the pharmaceuticals. So they're doing two things at once. They get incredible profits and then they get to also depopulate, So they always have multiple agendas. It's not just one single agenda. They try to take advantage of it at the same time as much as
Mm-hmm.
possible. And even at the municipal level, you see at all levels of government, we cannot, keep our eyes off. Just looking at just focusing on the federal governments is we're taking our way from what's happening at the provincial. And here in, Canada, we've got the three levels. We got the federal, provincial, and the municipal. And the
Mm-hmm.
municipal governments have been very much indoctrinated across the board. Like they go to these meetings and they are indoctrinated in terms of how to set up implement Agenda 2030, the ESGs,
Mm-hmm.
and you see, like to give an example here in Montreal, what they do is they're just literally trying to take over the city with bicycle paths and taking away parking spots, so and just continuous construction, so it becomes incredibly frustrating for people who are just trying to make a living and going to get to their work and so forth. So
Mm-hmm.
you can just see it, and also the built up of all these massive, large apartment or condos
Mm-hmm.
downtown. I mean, I've
Yeah.
worked on projects. I've seen it firsthand. These little boxes that have just like it's like you're in an aquarium. Unless you put a blind, and they're so tiny. There was ones that I didn't even see how they could install a single bed. Where would they fit it in these little studios? And this is in
Mm-hmm.
Montreal. It's not like this is in Hong Kong coffin apartments that they have like in Hong Kong. But this is approximation of that almost.
Yeah.
So
I think in the US, the hardest thing is so many people are like, well, this dictator, now he rules the courts. Well, we outnumber the courts, we outnumber the politicians, we outnumber it's just a matter of people fully comprehending what's going on here. And unfortunately, I don't see, enough people coming to grasp because like people who are so-called freedom, this guy's gonna save the day are cheering on the mass surveillance state through Palantir and all these things that are coming up. They right now they got a so-called penny shortage. So they're getting rid of pennies. It makes you wonder if you comment online about it, like, well, they're ramping up to roll out, digital currency. They're like, oh, you're crazy. That's it gonna be, it's just a standard penny shortage or whatever. You guys are absurd, you know?
yeah, they'll yeah, anyone who has a vocally critical of any of these things, they're very good at trying to cancel people that have a voice that or has a platform. Obviously they try to disparage them and
Hmm.
you know that is so common here in Canada as well. I mean, but luckily we've got a very robust alternative. Let's look on the positive side of things here. There's a very good alternative media in Canada now. It's become very more widespread, more popular than mainstream media. And there's a number of them that are like, Northern Perspective, Moose on the Loose, very good, very well, like sharp.
Hmm.
The pleb, he's a little bit more of a populist in his way of presenting things, but he does present very good information and he gets the information from the ground level, and a lot of them sprung out of the COVID situation where they started to report on what's going on. And it's good to see that there is a healthy movement because the media is is one of the major problems because
Yeah.
that's they are they're the ones that are pushing the narratives, and it's
Hmm.
very universal, these narratives. I mean, I'm sure in Barbados we would be able to pick out some of those narratives, and it's pretty well the same somewhere here in Canada. I mean, it's just maybe they
Hmm.
word it different, they present it different, slightly differently, but it's like I say, that's the one thing that they have the advantage is because they've managed to infiltrate like at all levels of government, the media completely, except for alternative, but they're losing their popularity, and there's
Hmm.
only certain generations that are still clinging to that. You know, a lot of the younger generation, luckily, I think from what I'm seeing are starting to see because their lives are being directly and massively impacted by this,
Hmm.
particularly the economic uh, demolition that's happening here. It's literally impossible for young people even to think. And I know that that's, again, we can't get caught in this idea that the ideal lifestyle is to get a job, buy a house, and just be comfortable. But it's still symbolic to have your own land, to have your own home,
Hmm.
versus to be in blocks of apartment, you know? So that's like an impossible dream for young people. It would take them 25 years just to save for a down payment. That's how bad it is here in Canada, even in the less expensive cities, not to
Hmm.
mention so they've done a great job at pushing out people from owning property, which is part of their objective, of course. And
Yeah.
that the young people there is definitely a groundswell of pop, like they're starting to become aware of this because they're directly
Yeah.
impacted.
Hmm. Well, we've been going for about an hour. Jahan, what do you want to say in closing to, encourage people? What do you think?
Whatever it is that you're afraid of, it doesn't exist. Whatever it is that you don't want to do in your life, just do it. It's actually not as hard as you think. It's just an excuse that you're making. We need solidarity. everyone in this world just wants love, but it seems like we, the individuals, aren't prepared to do what it takes to actually have it. And that's ridiculous. And that's why they win.
Hmm. Well, for Mark, for Jehan, for Ian, this is Wisdom and Knowledge 5. Thank you for collaborating. I'll be sure to post your podcast link in the show notes, Boundless Authenticity, because you can learn so much from Jehan and the guests that he brings on. So thanks so much, Ian. Thanks so much, Jehan. Much
Thank you for
love.
having me, Mark. Thanks. Also nice to meet you, Jehan, as well.
Or nice to meet you, Ian.
Cheers.
Much love. Take care.